Off the Windfall, back with another week video. Check it out, we got a 4+ brunescent cataract with an obvious coloBOMbA here. The question is there zonular weakness? You betcha. Look at the posterior segment here. See that vitreous, pigmented vitreous flop around there as I inject lidocaine into the eye? Look at the decentered nucleus. You can see the dent area is decentered superiorly or to the left of your screen. This is the right eye. Look at the fact that the equator of the lens is flattened. Those are all obvious indications of zonular weakness. Look at the wrinkles right here. Let me slow it down for you. Look at the wrinkling in the anterior capsule as we do the rhexis. This is going to be a beast of a case, okay? So let's tackle this cataract. What we're going to do first here is create some space. I do like a little bit of a groove or a terminal chop here. You can see that goes full thickness, so it doesn't propagate all the way subincisionally. We don't expect it to. That's because it's got a thick posterior plate. We're going to do Brian Kim's double chop here. We're able to chop up a quadrant there, or a little pizza slice at least. So we'll pull that up and eat it. And you'll notice that I'm coming out of the eye using a lot of OVD. I like to spin the lens with the chopper just because I'm a little bit more nimble that way. And I don't want to stress the zonules at all any more than physically possible when we already have pre-existing zonulopathy. So doing plenty of hydrodissection after I get that first quadrant out and being real nimble when I'm rotating the cataract within the bag here. So I like to do that with the conner you see as I just did there. And just as cataract coach always says, what do you do with a cataract? You do chop, chop, and more chop, and then finally, after being patient, boom, it's gone. Great, so this is highly sped up, of course. More zonulopathy indicators here, okay? Again, a lot of OVD, that's visco going into that area where you have the missing zonules so as to tamponade any vitreous from coming around. But watch the bag. Watch the bag come to the IA tip. With just any bit of aspiration, boom, the bag's there. And a lot of the cortex came up pretty easily, thankfully. Or that area inferiorly where the defect is, and temporally where the defect continues. I didn't go after that aggressively because again, I don't want to rip the just few zonules that are there. So we'll do the Hankins hack here, where it's a combination of Nito Rosatelli's mechanical removal of cortex. I'm using the conner here. He does this with soft cataracts before ever removing the entire cataract. He just goes around the equator with his chopper. And so I've done this for a long time with stubborn subincisional cortex that doesn't want to come to the IA tip. So loosen it up with the conner and then go in with the BSS cannula just to manually suck it down. And I saw that from Shannon Wong years ago. It works wonders. If you're not doing this and you ever have issues with stubborn cortex and you're worried about zonules, you got to try it. There's a little bit more cortex there. I thought about polishing it, and then better judgment said no, leave it be. Some of it was also pigmentation cells that had gone around and pigmented outside of the bag. So here the IOL is in place, but you can see it's decentered superiorly because the bag is misplaced because of the zonule. So we're going to put it in a CTR. We'll do it the way Uday likes to do it, which is where we'll guide the leading eyelet and then guide the trailing haptic. That settled a little bit within that defect. I wanted it to be outside of that defect, so I tried to turn it, but it was turning the entire bag, so that would have been a disservice to try to rotate that at this point, so I'll leave it be. And surprise, surprise, we've got a little vitreous strand coming from around the bag through the zonule. So we'll do a dry vitrectomy here. Again, I like dry vitrectomies because, at least in this case, because rather than have a dynamic anterior chamber here, we've got things really static, really controlled. And again, I'm trying to tamponade that area with viscoat, which is supposed to stay put while I go in with IA to remove all those bubbles. You can tell that's Helon, and that comes out quite nicely from behind the IOL. I'm getting it anteriorly, and I'm doing my I like to irrigate at the same time through the side port with the second hand. And this is where the eye has what I call BSS misdirection. Just in the same way that vitreous can come forward through the zonule, to the missing zonules, the fluid can come around the back, and then right away you see as the irrigation pressure comes out, the AC shallows. It's out of focus there because it's moved anteriorly, and at first I thought, oh, my wounds, although they seem to be perfect, they must have leaked a little bit. But you know what? This is not a soft eye. This is a hard eye. You got a shallow anterior chamber with a firm eye. The patient can feel the pressure, but they're not in pain. So you know it's not a suprachoroidal. This must be BSS misdirection. What do you do with BSS misdirection? Well, you can do a pars plana tap or vitrectomy. You can do Diamox. I didn't feel comfortable about doing a tap at this point, so I ordered some Diamox. But before I even got Diamox in the room, I could tell that the eye started to soften here. You'll notice that things start to reach, start to re-equilibrate, if you will. The fluid is coming back around through the missing zonules, and the eye starts to soften a touch. But more importantly, the IOL starts to fall back into its normal plane. See, it's tough to even get in front of it right there, but I've gotten in front of it, centered it up, and I tell the CRNA, don't give Diamox. This is going to resolve spontaneously. And so I'm watching it here, and I'm thinking, it just needs a little bit of encouragement. I put a little posterior pressure on the IOL, and that brings that fluid back around into the anterior chamber. This is the movement. But if you watch inferiorly where the defect is, not only does fluid come, a little bit, an elbow of vitreous prolapse, a little mushroom of vitreous comes there inferiorly. You can see it right there over by the eyelets of the CTR. And I recognized that immediately and thought, I don't want to go after that. Number one, it's an elbow or a mushroom as opposed to the distal end of a tentacle in terms of vitreous strand, so it could easily retract back into the posterior segment. And number two, even if it was a tentacle that isn't as likely to retract, it's localized. It's nowhere near the wound. It's nowhere near the angle. It's behind the iris plane. Going after that with a vitrector, you could ruin the bag. It would really be a disservice, in my opinion. So I chose to let it be, and then sure enough, post-operatively, you see it's retracted totally. This is post-op day 1, vision surprisingly 20/50, pinhole 20/30 from count fingers, and patient's happy. So see you next week. Peace.